A man who wears the 10 pounds of gold.
The nature boy, Ric Flair.
You know, I always like to take this opportunity to talk about myself.
The 16-time heavyweight champion has arrived.
I've got the style and profile like never before.
The greatest talker in the history of the business is behind the mic once again.
You're talking to the Rolex wearing, diamond ring wearing, kiss stealing, wheeling dealing, limousine like, jet flying, son of a gun. Woo!
This is Wooooo Nation with Ric Flair.
I'm the man. Ric Flair.
Hey, this is the Nature Boy Ric Flair, 16 times your world champion. Welcome to Wooooo Nation, along with my co-host, the legendary Conrad Thompson, multi-millionaire from Alabama that has too much money, not enough time, and takes time out of each week to do this podcast with me. And obviously, as we've talked about before, one of the most knowledgeable wrestling people right alongside Dave Meltzer. Conrad, how are you today?
I'm good, man. I don't know about the Meltzer talk, but I'm happy to be here in 2016. I want to thank you again for a great New Year's Eve with the Alabama game, and I'm excited about our guest today.
Boy, well, I'm excited too. Ladies and gentlemen, we've had everybody from Lawrence Taylor to Gene Okerlund. I mean, we've had the Hall of Famers and all that, and of course you can imagine how excited I am today. And we're so lucky that we're getting her off a treadmill, or getting her off a elliptical, or getting her off the phone because she's constantly doing radio and promotional work for the company. I'm talking about the woman's diva champion, my beautiful daughter, Charlotte. Hello, young lady.
Thanks, Dad. Thanks, Conrad, for having me.
Well, we're excited to have you here, and first of all, congratulations on a hell of a match Monday night. I know that there's a SmackDown match that's supposed to be just as awesome coming tonight, but I thought Monday was one of your best matches you've had on Raw, so thank you for that match.
Oh, thank you. And, obviously Becky is one of my closest friends behind the scenes, too. So just, being able to finally have a chance to have a storyline against someone that I debuted with and came from NXT with, it's been great.
So I'm going to kind of have the driver's seat a little bit today because we took to Twitter, and I think you actually saw this, Charlotte. We went ahead and said, #AskNach. So we invited the fans to go ahead and ask you guys some questions. And Teresa Richards on Twitter wrote in, you started wrestling fairly recently. What was the tipping point that led to you pursuing a career in wrestling?
Well, Four Horsemen Hall of Fame induction at
Miami,
2.5 months, prior to me starting. The opportunity came up, and I was just personal training. I didn't have much going on, and I was like, Dad, should I do this? And Reed was like, you got to do it. So I was like, all right. There every single day was a battle. Do I do it? Do I not? Do I do it? And then the day I started in Tampa, I just never looked back.
So when you were at the Hall of Fame induction, does somebody from the WWE approach you and make the pitch, or does it just come up in casual conversation, or what does that look like?
We were, I think, staying at the Marriott. We were at the hotel restaurant. It was me, my dad, Reed, Johnny Laurinaitis, and the funny thing is I think the Bella twins were actually in the hotel restaurant as well. And Laurinaitis was like, why aren't you doing this? And I was like, I don't know. It's not something I ever thought about, dreamed about. And he was like, why not? And then, of course, Reed was poking at me like, oh, my gosh, you'd be so great at this. We could be doing it together. And I just looked at my dad, and he was like, okay, but if you're going to do it, just make sure you put your whole heart into it. And a lot of hard work and time and goes into this. And, he knew at the time that I was married, so he was just like, this is going to be a test. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, and at that time, just to clarify to people, John was the head of talent relations. Now, John is semi-backed out of that position, and Mark Carano handles that now. But and John, I broke John Laurinaitis into business. So the irony of him asking Ashley, who he's known forever, just as he knew Reed forever, was pretty cool. And then she walked away and came back, and I knew that it clicked. I just wasn't sure if she understood the commitment and moving away from home. Not that she needed to be stuck at home. I didn't mean that, but it's a big move. It's a change in lifestyle. She was making a lot of money, but she was working 49 or 50 hours a week for it. And she took a pay cut, and because everybody starts out, everybody thinks you get rich when you sign with WWE. It's not the way it is. You've got to earn your stripes, and she took a pay cut and moved there, and never looked back. It's been a great ride for me, I know. So, and she's been through so much, and I'm just extremely proud of her. The world knows that, and how many times in life it has happened that I'm getting to walk out to the ring with my daughter on a weekly basis now, and for as long as it happens. But it just doesn't happen like that in this business. And she won the championship in record time. I'm not even sure, Ashley, you can correct me, but I would venture to say you hadn't had 100 matches prior to coming up to Raw, had you?
Probably around 100.
Around 100, but never wrestled an indie show, just, wrestling the same people. So to come along and been wrestling the same people for, almost 3 years, and then to come up and then hit the roster and take off like that is almost unheard of. The only person I've ever seen catch on to the business, I've said it before, and I said it on the podcast, to catch on to our business that fast is Kurt Angle. And Kurt was already a great Olympic wrestler, but it's still being an Olympic wrestler and being a pro wrestler are two different things. So, I'm amazed by it, and I've seen a lot of people come along.
Well, Rick, I know it's early in the morning, but you mistakenly called our guest Charlotte Ashley, so I just wanted to correct that we're actually talking to Charlotte now.
I'm sorry.
Charlotte, tell us a little bit about what was more challenging for you, like the change of life from going from living in North Carolina to getting moved down to NXT and uprooting your life and training for wrestling every day and going from personal training to there, or then the second jump from NXT to main roster. What was more of an adjustment for you?
Well, first of all, I've lived in North Carolina my entire life. So I could kind of say I was kind of a small-town girl just because I only lived in Charlotte, Boone, and Raleigh prior to moving to Tampa. And then getting to Tampa, just living somewhere else was an adjustment. But I had people around me that I'd known my whole life. Joe Gomez was one who is a Tampa native, and he helped me a lot. Obviously, I had known Dusty my whole life, which really didn't help getting to developmental because he'd make the most ridiculous comments. I'm like, Dusty, you're really not helping me here if you want the talent to like me. And then, obviously, Ricky Steamboat was a coach at the time as well, and Steamboat had known me my whole life, and I had grown up with Richie, and Richie was actually, I think, the champ at the time when I got there. Or had just dropped the title. But, no, that was an adjustment. And then it's just, as, and FCW was growing, and then it grew to NXT, and then, it became what it is today, another brand. And then debuting on the main roster, I just kind of grew with the product, to be honest, as a person. But I think the bigger adjustment now is I'm recognized everywhere. As before, I'd always been recognized because I traveled with my dad, so it wasn't like, instead of, someone asking me to take the picture, it's like, can you get the picture? It's crazy. I know. And sometimes I really have not, because I started a little over 3.5 years ago, and I really haven't had a break since then, so I haven't really taken it all in. Before talking to you guys this morning, I had some radio interviews to promote the move to SmackDown to USA, and they were kind of chronologically going over my run, talking about Rookie of the Year for PWI, and then the NXT Championship, and then the NXT Tours, and then debuting in the Divas Championship, and then Muscle and Fitness. And I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about some of that stuff. Because it's just happening so fast.
Right.
Like next week I'm going to India, and it's just crazy.
The National Academy of Sports Medicine is looking for people who want an exciting career in the fitness industry, where you wake up every day doing something you love. NASM trainers are improving people's lives by helping them reach their health and fitness goals, and the demand for these trainers is huge. Imagine waking up every day excited to get to work, not a job, but to a rewarding career, getting paid to stay in shape while helping others reach their fitness goals. You set your own hours, work in health clubs, sports clinics, and corporate wellness, and you'll love who you work with. Do what you truly enjoy and get paid for it. There is no better time than now to get started on your certification with the National Academy of Sports Medicine. Plus, NASM guarantees you'll land a job as a personal trainer within 60 days of earning your CPT certification, or your money back guaranteed. Go to myusatrainer.com for a free 14-day free trial of their fast and fun online program. That's myusatrainer.com, myusatrainer.com. Restrictions apply. Visit myusatrainer.com for details. Woo! All the ladies love Slick Rick. You know they love Woo Nation. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back.
Welcome to Play It, a new podcast network featuring radio and TV personalities talking business, sports, tech, entertainment, and more. Play it at play.it.
Will that be your first European tour or out of the country tour, international tour?
No. My first European tour was this fall.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And as champion, too, which is even crazier.
Well, if you need to be reminded of your Muscle and Fitness magazine, I've got about 40 issues that I pass out.
Thank you, Father. I know you use them as business cards.
I walk them through. I walk through every airport and buy 5 everywhere I go.
I know, I still haven't seen one in the store.
Well, it means your dad beat you there. That's what that is. So,
yeah.
So,
well, we are traveling together now, so I'm sure he did beat me there.
Rick, did you ever imagine that Charlotte would be in the WWE? Did you ever envision a life for her as a wrestler, or is that something that never even crossed your mind?
It never crossed my mind. And I tell you what, it's not that she didn't appreciate what I did but she was, full-time into her own career. I mean, whenever I wrestled in Charlotte, she was always right there front row. It wasn't about not caring. She didn't have time in her schedule because, which is something we want to talk about today, which is, very heartfelt for me. But she was in such high demand on an amateur level between basketball, volleyball, gymnastics, cheerleading. It was like managing a rock star. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And if I didn't allow you, no, I'm going to throw her name out. Barbara Nelson was the AD and the girls basketball coach at Providence State, where Ashley attended until she was in the 10th grade when we transferred her to a 4A school, just because she needed a bit better competition. But Barbara would call me like regularly. I want Ashley to play basketball. Well, she played 1 year, and she was the best rebounder in the league, but she didn't like it. So I still made her go to a camp that she didn't want to go to.
No, it's not that I didn't like. I had fallen in love with volleyball. Like my dad sent me to a couple of volleyball camps, and I connected with the girls more than I did with the basketball team. And I had done all-star cheerleading for so long. Not so long. I did it for 2.5 years with an older group of girls because I was the youngest girl to ever compete with that team, and we won a couple nationals. I fell in love with basketball. It's not that I didn't like or volleyball. I just didn't like. I don't know. I just connected with the girls better.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying the point I was making is Barbara Nelson never talked to me again. She thought I let her down.
Sad.
I said I can't control Ashley's feelings. She likes volleyball, and that started out with a guy named Brian Carlott. Said I hadn't met Brian, and we were watching Ashley her freshman year because she started playing at 1 year at Providence Day, and I think they took third in the state her freshman year or second in the state. And Brian Carlott said, "God, she's got a great future at this." I said, "You think?" And all someone has to do is give me the cent. And then I'm going to find a Nike camp. And the rest is history.
What she did.
Which I did. So she was up in Chapel Hill for 2 weeks every summer. And any place else I could send her.
So, Charlotte, is this something you considered as a kid? I mean, your dad mentioned that you were ringside for all the shows, and you talked about knowing Dusty and Ricky, your whole life. Is this something that you ever imagined, or it never even really crossed your mind until 2012?
I didn't consider it, no. Also, too, I was sitting there and you're thinking, how do these people perform in front of 12,000 people? Performing was something I was extremely scared of. Even when I got to FCW, just performing in front of 12 people, I remember I was like, feeling like I had a heart attack before I'd walk through the curtain. I was like, why am I doing this? I feel like I'm going to have a heart attack. So, no, it wasn't. I loved playing sports. Also, too, when you grow up as your dad, who he is, you don't ever really see yourself in that profession.
Right.
Well, I mean, how could you?
Sure. So, who were your favorite wrestlers as a kid? Were you a wrestling fan as a kid, and who were you into, and what did you enjoy?
I had a big crush on Sting. I liked Macho Man.
Randy Orton.
That was when I got older.
I've kept track of the crushes.
No, I'd say Sting and Macho Man were my favorite. Obviously, Dusty was a favorite. And then I guess my dad calls them crushes. I liked some of the guys when I was in high school, and then I just never really thought about it in college. I took one of the most memorable moments. I took my volleyball team when I was at App State to my dad's ladder match against Edge and Raleigh, and that was so much fun.
I heard a fun story about when you were a kid in school, and there was like a show and tell or something. And
I took Macho Man.
Yeah, tell us that story.
I don't know. I guess WCW was in town, and which is funny that we had I brought him to school too, but I know my dad's going to remember this. We had this family. The mother's name was Sybil. Took care of me and my little brother a bit. They also, I don't want to call them cleaning ladies, but they cleaned, upkept our house. And Macho Man threw her in the pool, and then she was looked like she couldn't swim, so then Macho Man jumped in after her. Do you remember that, Dad?
Of course I do. No, what happened was how Macho, he came into town because, Conrad, I don't even know if you know this, but I had the Four Goals gyms in Charlotte, and Ron Rice was a friend of mine. So Ron, I wanted to do the Hawaiian Tropic beauty contest, the Hawaiian Tropic swimsuit contest at the bar that was attached to my gym. And, of course, I made a deal with the Sea Ray dealership, and we had 6 weeks of the Hawaiian Tropic. Walk out of the gym right into the bar and all the bathing suit girls, right? And the winner won a 21-foot ski boat. So Macho came in to judge the finals, and I said, how about coming over to school to see Ashley? And he said, yeah, no problem. So she took Macho for show and tell. It was pretty cool. Randy was a big star, guys. Make no mistake.
Oh, absolutely. So, hey, we had another question. We'll go back to Twitter. Dave Miller on Twitter writes in, has Charlotte ever considered wearing a nice robe to the ring like her dad? I always enjoyed the way he unveiled the belt, and it would be fitting now that she's the champ.
if I have my WrestleMania moment, I would like to have a road made.
If.
Yeah, so let's talk about WrestleMania.
Okay, Dad, when?
If you could armchair quarterback it, who would you like to wrestle at this year's WrestleMania? Of course, we're not revealing anything, but hypothetically, if you could just have your druthers, who would you like to wrestle at WrestleMania against this year?
Well, I guess there's two people. I know that's hard, but honestly, there's two. One, the first one, obviously, would be able to relive the Natalya story because there's just so much family history there.
Right.
With Brett in her corner, my dad and mine. And then the second, obviously, would be my greatest, I guess, opponent this far, and that'd have to be the Boss. Thanks.
Yeah.
One-on-one.
Yeah, I think all the wrestling fans would be tickled with either one of those. Those are two matchups that people can't seem to get enough of.
Those two.
Yeah, well,
and they're completely different too. But Sasha and I had a lot of chemistry, and to be, since we main evented the first time together, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, it's funny because Sasha's the one I think that everybody pretty much feels that you need to compete against eventually. But it's funny, the chemistry that you have with her, you had instant chemistry with Natty with just one match. And then, of course, you had her at time in Greenville, but that was 2 minutes or whatever it was. But, God, I've
4 minutes, but who's counting?
Yeah. But in the last, since Monday and then tonight, you have got phenomenal chemistry with Becky Lynch. I mean, you guys are just out there. When you got 10, 12 minutes, what you had or 14 one night, I mean, that's a long time. And I tell everybody, and Conrad gets it, to put you guys on the crossover segments as having a lot of confidence in you guys, if that makes sense. In the crossover.
Well, yeah, and Becky's the ultimate underdog. I mean, she is, in my opinion, other than Ambrose, the only true babyface.
Yeah.
In the entire company. And not only that, our chemistry, she's like my rock on the road. We travel together. We train together. Obviously, I didn't get to work her that much in NXT. We had like one singles match, I think, when she first debuted, and she debuted with a completely different gimmick. And then we had that Fatal 4-Way, and we ran that Fatal 4-Way a couple times on live events, and then a triple threat, me, her, and Sasha. Me, her, and Bayley, which she won, which, ended up having the match against Sasha. But, no, it's just being able, also, too, we have chemistry, I think, a lot, too, because we're so close, and we equally, want to work together to tell the best story. And her being that underdog babyface, it was awesome on Monday. And then tonight, the title match on SmackDown, which I don't know when this podcast airs, but...
Yeah, it'll be up later today, and if you haven't already heard, you should check out SmackDown. It's back on the USA Network, or maybe there for the very first time, but they're going to have a really bang-up show and a really awesome match, from what you understand, with Charlotte taking on Becky Lynch. So check it out tonight. Going back to Twitter real fast, we have a great question here, I think, that I never really put two and two together. Rob on Twitter wants to know about the Do It With Flair shirt. I know, Rick, you had a shirt like that back in the Mid-Atlantic days. Whose idea was that? And do you guys remember how that came about for that being a shirt for Charlotte?
I remember it was my second match. Okay, so I'd won the title against Natty. And then my second big takeover match with NXT was against Bayley. And they said I was getting my first T-shirt that day. I had no idea what it was going to look like. And I got there, and it was the royal blue. If you're going to do it with Flair. And the Flair, obviously on the back, kind of resembled my dad's Flair on his robe.
Right.
And I went to merch, and I was like, I'm getting tweeted old pictures of my dad in a shirt that has the same thing. And they were like, whose idea was this? And they were like, well, it was Hunter's and hours together. And then I went to Hunter and I was like, oh my gosh, look at this shirt. And he's like, I had no idea. So
Wow.
that's where it came from.
Yeah, Hunter sent me, I couldn't tell her. Hunter had sent me a picture of the shirts about a week in advance. You know, it's one of those deals where don't tell her, you know, okay?
Right.
It's hard not to tell her.
What did you usually tell me?
Oh, you don't know how. Hey, listen, I'm so tired of arguing with you about with the destiny of we're not every time you tell me something's going to happen, it happens. So I'm tired of arguing with you. I can't win the argument. I just disengage and walk away. The other night she was
like you did on Monday. You were making me so mad. Oh.
You know, it's like, who do you think taught Hunter how to work? and you're telling me how to work.
God, we had to shoot the promo. He said the wrong day, and then I'm like waiting on my line, but he's going off on his own tangent. I'm like, Dad, the line is Leech.
I'm talking about when we were setting up your match. Good Lord.
Oh.
God forbid I say anything. You got it, Dad? You got it? You got it, Dad? Yeah, I got it, honey. Okay.
I know, Dad. It's your first rodeo. I know.
Listen, being your manager is a rodeo. I got news for you. She goes, Dad, I'm nervous.
Funny.
I said, nervous is good. It's good. It's a good thing. Dad, I'm thinking. Dad.
Tonight on SmackDown, we had to shoot the pre-tape, and then we had the match. And I don't think he understood that we were going into the pre-tape into the match. So my music hit, and I'm like trying to get through the gorilla to go through the curtain, and my dad's just like hanging out in gorilla. I'm like, Dad, my music is playing. We have to.
I was letting you have your moment.
Oh, okay.
Let you have your moment. What the heck?
Oh, okay. Yeah, thanks, Dad.
Yeah, Mike, okay. I couldn't get up the stairs fast enough with my ankle.
Oh, I forgot. Oh,
whose idea was it to pair you guys up and to bring Rick and make him a regular part of the show with you every week?
I think it was Vince's idea.
Yeah, it sure was. It came right from him.
I think, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I think the idea was, what could people at home relate to? Right. And they can relate to a father-daughter relationship. I think that was the idea.
Well, it was also, I think it was, and you correct me if I'm wrong, I think if there was anything that was holding Ashley back, was her level of comfort with, being a tweener. And being a tweener is really tough. I'll give you an example of a tweener. They put Dolph Ziggler in that position all the time. 1 week it's this, the next week it's that. And the guy has got a ton of ability. I mean, more than a ton of ability, and a great guy. But every week it changed around. And Ashley, it was never a question of talent or skill or anything like that. But until you find an identity, and I'm just a temporary point, but she's a full-fledged heel now. And I mean, Conrad, the reaction, and here we are, and I'm thinking Laredo might not be too good, it's a smaller crowd. Not a smaller crowd, but smaller marketplace. And the reaction while Becky was on top, they're chanting Becky. And that's what you want. I mean, they were getting a better reaction Monday night, and you'll see tonight, than some of the guys' matches were. Because it was a definitive difference in character, and one was like a heel.
And that really helps, to be honest.
Yeah, and I'm just out there going, woo, I'm not doing anything.
Well, just taking off your jacket and dancing a little bit.
Well, that's only in celebrating. That's not in the body of the match.
Oh, okay, Dad.
The funny thing of it is, everybody's forgotten that I could nip up like that. I was in Gorilla one day. You know what Gorilla is, right, Conrad?
Yes, sir.
Anyways, Conrad, the point is, I think Dad. Are you serious right now? At NXT, I was a heel for the majority of for the majority of NXT television. And the babyface transition just kind of happened because I had dropped the title, and I think the fans had kind of grew to respect me.
Right.
So that's kind of what made me the babyface. And then, just debuting me on the main roster from where I left off at NXT, I think it was challenging for me. Don't get me wrong, I love being a babyface, but with my size, it's not that I'm so much bigger than the other girls, but I find it easier to play that more dominant role. And also, like, the character itself, when you're calling yourself genetically superior, I find that hard to be endearing.
Yeah. It's hard to be a sympathetic babyface when you're bigger and calling yourself superior.
Yeah, and it being reality.
Right.
So that's what's really tough. I could call myself genetically superior all day long. People would go, ha, 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 ha. Now he's really smoking something. You know what I mean? Ashley can say it and pull it off. So, I mean, it's great. But let's get back to it. I was on the cover of PWI 1,000 times, but I've never been on the cover of Muscle and Fitness. I don't think it's coming up in the near future.
Well, talk about that, Charlotte. What level of involvement as a little kid or importance did your dad put on physical fitness? How big of a deal is that in your household?
Don't get her going.
Dad, would you like to answer this one, or would you like me?
Well, I want to hear your take on it. I know what level I was in.
I know. I mean, now I'm thanking him. I probably I put up a little bit of a fight, a little bit growing up, but I had a personal trainer from the moment I could walk. But I think the difference is I was in gymnastics.
Well, you were just 5 before you could talk.
He always made me drink my milk. I couldn't leave the table. I remember in high school when he'd be home, he'd have protein shakes. Like, he wasn't home that much, but in the morning when he was, he'd be up to make us breakfast, and I'd be like walking out the door, and he'd be like, "Here's your protein shake and your vitamins." I'd walk out the door. I'd see that the door was shut. I'd throw the protein shake in the grass, throw out the vitamins, get in my car, and off I'd go because I thought I was too cool for school. But no, my dad's always been hands-on with me athletically, always found the best camps. I couldn't go on summer vacations unless I had seen, my trainer was Jeff George at the time, or I'd gone to the certain camp he wanted me to, and volleyball practice, he'd bring, like a cooler of protein bars and Gatorade for the girls. He's always been big with nutrition and making sure that I was the best. Here's a funny story. I'm sure he's told this before, but when I was a freshman in high school, I actually was trying out for the varsity volleyball team. And I was kind of at that age where I really wanted to fit in, and I wanted the senior girls to think I was cool. And we had the mile run, and it was being timed. And the coach was like, "All right, get set, go." Hits the timer, and the girls take off. And the seniors were like, "Ha, ha, ha, this is a joke. We've been here 4 years." And I was like, "Oh, cool, I'll just hang out back here with the seniors and not run my little heart out." Mind you, my dad's in the bleachers watching this, and he sees what I'm doing. So as I start to pass him, like maybe 30 yards from the start line, he starts like walking down the fence, pointing at me, saying like, "Keep going now." And I'm like, "Oh my God." So mind you, I get done. I'm like, "Oh, my dad just made a scene." I get done with the mile. I, say hey to the girl, like bye to the girls or whatever, and I go to get in the car to find my dad to take me home, and he left me at school. I had to get a ride home because he was so mad.
She just dogged. She could run faster backwards, trying to fit in. Ha!
That's hilarious.
It's the best. Hey, tell them about the year that you had problems with math and I made you go work out after summer school. That was the best. That was the biggest argument. Oh.
Welcome to Play It, a new podcast network featuring radio and TV personalities talking business, sports, tech, entertainment, and more. Play it at play.it.
Yes, I did have problems with math. Thank you very much, Dad.
Funny.
No, I had to go to summer school, and then I had to go to training. So it was a long summer for me and my parents, I think.
Well, problem with the math runs in the family, so you're not alone.
Oh, shocker there.
Well, I can just tell you from my experiences with Ashley, it just, some people come along and they have a gift, and it just you just gotta. It wasn't. I don't think I was controlling, because she always could do what she wanted at night after she did what she wanted to do, and God only knows when she got to college, if I held her down her freshman year in college, she made up for all the time I held her down, because she and her best friend, who were still very close today, Brittany Zahn, who was a phenomenal volleyball player, and they competed against each other in high school, and it was like a big deal in Charlotte when Catholic played Providence. It was probably the biggest competition between two schools in the state. Catholic being a 3A school and Ashley being in a 4A Providence Day, where they won 2 state championships while Ashley was there and took second. The other
Providence High.
Huh?
Providence High.
Providence High. They won her sophomore year, took second her junior year, and took first again her senior year. And she was player of the year. And Brittany went off to Tennessee. She was a year older than Ashley. And then she wasn't happy there. And when Ashley signed with App, and Brittany found out about it, she moved to transferred to App, there was no restriction because of a different conference. And Ashley never spent one night in a dormitory. They got an apartment. Being on scholarship meant nothing. She was in an apartment, furnished, everything, and it was great. But every night I'd get this call. It's a family tradition. Why do we drink? Why do we smoke?
Okay, Dad.
She and Brittany had fun in college, guys.
Yeah. Okay, Dad. No, I did have fun in college.
Well, let's go to Twitter. Pat the Rat has a question for Ashley. Hey, Ric and Charlotte, how did Ric explain the WrestleMania 8 storyline with the Miss Elizabeth affair to you and your siblings? That would have been when you were a little kid. Did your dad ever have to come to you and kind of smarten you up about what you were seeing on TV?
She was only 7 years old then, or maybe 6.
Yeah, no, I don't even remember. No.
They came to that match. They came to Indianapolis for that match, but they were like 7 and 5 or 6 and 4, real young. So they were there for the first one, and then. But I don't think the kids.
Also, too, Conrad, I really wasn't. My dad could attest, or he can vouch for this. I wasn't really into wrestling.
Right.
Like, obviously, Reed and David were, but none of. I was there. Like the moments I remember was when we were with Muhammad Ali in Chicago, or when my dad's parents were with us when he wrestled Vader at Starrcade. Like little flashbacks like that. But other than that, there was nothing that really stands out, for instance, in having to explain a storyline or anything like that. When Eric Bischoff sued him, I do remember that, being talked about at home.
So did you guys have like a family meeting about the Bischoff situation, or is that not something that would have happened?
No, actually.
I assume my dad was mad and my mom was mad, but...
Well, actually, it's funny because if I look back on that now and I tell people this, that really gave me a chance. And every time Bischoff took me off TV and left me off for a weekend, it gave me another weekend with Reed and Ashley. So if I look back on it, even though it was upsetting and not cost effective, that year or 8 months that I was off, I just spent with them. The hardest day for me, really, if you think about it, and I tell people this, was the day Ashley could drive. I went, what do you don't need me to pick you up? No. Can I take you to school? No. It was the day she could drive, man. She didn't need me to take her to practice anymore. And she used to practice up at the university because her AAU team was coached by the coach of the University of Charlotte. And she had to practice 30 miles away, and she and Brittany were gone. They didn't need me. So that was, then I really started leaning on Reed. The minute he could drive, he was really gone. Sorry, Dad. Yeah, you think? Hey, Conrad, how about this? We're playing volleyball. Ashley's like a sophomore in high school, right? And she's going to die when I tell this story. So I can't remember where they're playing, at Weddington or something like that. I think it was Weddington. It's so familiar to me. I was thinking about it last night. And then walked this real handsome young kid, and I knew him from somewhere. And he goes, "Hey, Mr. Flair, how you doing?" And I go, "Great. Where do I know you from?" He said, "I'm the guy from Myrtle Beach that rents the jet skis to your kids." I said, "So what? Give me the core." Then I went, "Oh, wow. Oh, so are you here to see me?" Hello, Ashley.
You're good, Dad. You're good.
Yeah. So hello.
I forgot about him.
We're not renting jet skis today. What are you doing here?
That's hilarious.
Yeah, it's 4:00 in the afternoon and it's winter time. So yeah. So kind of. I obviously I didn't have the brakes on long enough. I let Reed go down to Myrtle Beach one time with his buddy, little Michael. And he came back home with a live crocodile. Jesus.
It's a Mongo, he named it.
I know.
That's hilarious.
Another time he came back with a red boa, a boa constrictor. Jesus. Yeah, they both had their independence. Don't worry about that. One of Ashley's best friends, this is a great story, and Ashley and I laugh at this all the time. Not Meredith Brantley. What's your
Emily?
Emily Parker. So here's the deal. Emily Parker just moved in, and so she didn't go home. And so Ashley's in summer school, and Emily was a cheerleader, but about 3 years older than Ashley. But she just moved into the house. So one day she would just lay out in the sun by the pool, and Ashley was in school. And I walked over. I said, "Emily, don't you think your mom and dad are a little worried about you? Don't you need to go home?" She said, "If I go home, my dad's going to ask me to get a job. Why would I go home?" We just had a compound there. They all hung out there. Oh, Jesus! It's like the next door neighbor. One day I drove in the driveway, and he goes, "Hey, I met your son the other day, man." And I said, "My son, yeah." I said, "I'm thinking, David. He invited me over for a beer." And I said, "He invited you over for a beer?" I said, "My son, David." I tried to think to myself, when was David over here? And he goes, "Not David, Reed." He said, "Reed had about 10 of his little friends over there, and he's about 14 years old, and they're drinking Bud Light with the next door neighbor who's a dentist." Good Lord. Yeah, they all had a little leeway. Hello, honey.
So let's get back to Twitter questions. We've got hashtag AskNach. We've got apparently one of your biggest fans, Charlotte, wants to know what's the most rewarding part about being the Divas champion?
I would say the most rewarding part is, since I'm kind of at the forefront, I guess you could say, being the champion, that I can somewhat try to change the perception, since I'm, I guess, kind of the face right now. Not that the next girl who, wins won't, but my dream and goals are, to change the face of women's wrestling. And being champion, I hope that gives me a little more leeway and opportunity to do that. I want to main event a pay-per-view. I want to wrestle at WrestleMania. I want to bring back the women's championship. I want longer matches. I want, those crossover segments. More storylines, just not to be eye candy or popcorn matches. And hopefully, being champion at the moment, I just can somewhat kick open more doors and pave the way for more opportunities.
I want to follow up on something you said there, because there has been a little bit of a push online with fans who want to see the WWE move away from the term diva and move into a women's champion with maybe a new belt. Are you co-signing that idea? Is that something you'd like to see happen?
Oh, definitely. And I'm not taking away anything from the Divas Championship. I just think as the division is evolving, the title could evolve too.
Evan on Twitter wants...
And from what I understand, I think NXT is going to go to not using diva anymore. So
NXT will be
it would only be natural. Yeah, I think it would only be natural for that to happen on the main roster as well.
Evan on Twitter.
But, I mean, you have to think how many years in branding is behind the butterfly, Divas Championship. So it just can't happen overnight.
Evan on Twitter wants to know about your time at NXT. What was it like wrestling in front of that crowd, and how does it compare to wrestling on the main roster as far as the crowds go?
Well, the NXT crowd is challenging, good and bad. NXT is a true wrestling show.
Right.
So, what was nice about the NXT crowd is I grew up basically in front of them. Had my first match ever in front of them. But wrestling in front of 400 people is way harder than wrestling in front of 12,000 people. Sometimes they want to control the match, but I think they might be a little harder to impress because they're the diehard fans.
Right.
But they just make you want to be that much better. Because if you can make them happy, you can definitely make those 12,000 happy. But then again, you want to remember, don't change to tell your story that you want to tell.
Right.
Don't let anyone else dictate your story.
Well, how would you compare the involvement with the agents at NXT compared to the main roster as far as laying out matches and promos and all that? Would you say you have more leeway in NXT, less on the main roster, or do I have that wrong?
What's so different is NXT, you meet once a month and you take 4 shows. The main roster, every single week, and the show goes on. So every Monday, then you got SmackDown tapings every Tuesday. I mean, you were go, 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 go. NXT, maybe you find out a week ahead of time before what's going to be, taped at the next NXT tapings. So maybe you'll get to work that girl on the live event. Maybe you'll get to practice. Maybe you won't. When you're on the main roster, it's changing up until the show starts.
Right.
The time, maybe the finish, maybe the storyline, maybe even the person changes. It's the pressure and the money behind what's happening on the main roster is completely different than NXT. For me, there's just as much pressure on both, just because I'm that competitive. But the main roster, there's a lot more variables you have to deal with, and you have to be able to handle and compose and deliver than at NXT, because it's tapings. The only thing live is the special, and then when you travel to those NXT live events now that are outside of Florida.
Hey, Charlotte.
Yeah.
I know how I feel about it, but it's got to be great having Lita involved now, right, with the company?
The producer. Oh, well, no. Well, Sarah, for me, it was different not having Sarah, because Sarah was hands-on with me since the beginning. I was only there for maybe 2 or 3 months before Sarah Del Rey got there. So she and Norman Smiley, Dusty, Terry Taylor, I don't want to leave anyone out, but they've really been there since since SCW. Sarah's been hands-on with shaping my wrestling ability, my skills, my move set, and moving to the main roster and kind of being like, oh, I'm setting my child free into the world. It's much different. But then, now having Lita work with us, it's a completely different perspective, because, Lita's been one of the, if not biggest stars on WWE programming, and also from the Attitude Era. So she might have a different look at something than, Sarah. But then again, because I've been an athlete my whole life, how I like to be. I know it's not coached, it's called produced, but, Sarah knows what helps me understand certain things, because then again, people have to realize I've only been doing this for a little over 3 years. And for that first year, you really can't count that as a year in wrestling, because I only have like maybe 6 matches. But Lita can, give you a different perspective on, like for instance, she was telling me about, when I was a babyface at the time, like, waiting for that hot tag, holding my chest up like this, showing this certain posture. And Sarah does that too, but it's just from explaining it differently. And also being a woman is great. Having another woman behind you is even better. Because sometimes, people forget it's a man's world. And she's another female that wants to go into that meeting every day and fight for us.
Yeah, she's very good, and she's tough. She's tough. And,
extremely tough.
Yeah. I wish everybody, and I take this the right way, could hear the girls lay out their matches. It's no different than the guys. The verbiage is entirely the same. I look at them and I go, is this my daughter talking? And it's Lita talking like Hunter. I mean, it's somebody. And
also, too, we have access to Hunter on the main roster as well, just not as much. And I think that's a big difference, too, just because we had, Hunter was able to work with us and had more time with us at NXT, because it was just for NXT. When we get up there, we have Lita, and sometimes, we can get Hunter's attention because he has like 3,000 billion gazillion things going on the main roster. But Michael Hayes is still available to us as well. But since Lita has such a repertoire, or that's not the right word, a rapport with them, because she's known them, so she could just go ask them. But that's the only difference.
Yeah,
it's time.
I was trying to convey to Charlotte on Tuesday for the show that's airing tonight. When you have Hunter, Lita, and Michael Hayes helping to put the match together, you're getting a lot of attention.
Yeah.
And all 3 of them spent time putting that match together, which means that I would tell me that I was in a good place. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And I'm sure that my hat's off to Becky. Becky has worked her butt off too. It's a lot, but when you get that level of attention,
and I couldn't be more excited for Becky right now. It's just awesome.
Well, she's a wonderful girl.
Here, when you guys watched SmackDown tonight, and obviously, kind of a taste of what happened in San Antonio. They just were so loud for her. It was awesome.
Yeah, it really was.
And Becky's first title match on the main roster.
Oh, was that Becky's first title match?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay. Yeah, I guess.
On the main roster for the Divas Championship.
Yeah.
Not NXT.
Welcome to Play It, a new podcast network featuring radio and TV personalities talking business, sports, tech, entertainment, and more. Play it at play.it.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you a question on a personal note. You know about John, right? John Cena?
Kind of, not really.
Well, he's having rotator cuff surgery today. So,
oh, really?
Yeah, he's not going to, I don't think he's going to make WrestleMania. So, I know you're close to Nikki and the Bellas and John and all that, but it's a big blow to the company in my estimation. What do you think?
You can look at it 2 ways. You can look at it as a big blow, or you can look at it as an opportunity for a lot of young talent to step up.
That's very cool.
And give them a chance. And, it's crazy to think the Shield, let's say Roman, Seth, and Ambrose were at FCW when I got there. They weren't there very long, but seeing them take over, and then one of my personal favorites, the Wyatts, giving them more opportunity. So, no, I think it's just it's a huge blow, but then again, it's another opportunity.
That's a great answer. That's a great answer.
And also, and I know this is, I'm trying to think of the girls as well, but with him not being there, that means you've got to build super hot feuds for WrestleMania, And I can think of a couple with the girls being involved. So I just hope that's, you got to think of, someone like Rusev too. There's just so many guys that it could open the door for.
Yeah. Well, that's a great answer. It's the truth. I mean, that's the way a lot of guys look at it. I hope that people take it that approach. That obviously the company scrambles when they lose a major guy, and they've not only lost, if you think about it, John, Seth, Cesaro. I mean, all these guys.
Cesaro is that? Yeah, I know.
Randy Orton's gone. I mean, that's a lot to take off your main roster in terms of talent to go into WrestleMania. But basically, it's already sold out anyway, which it speaks volumes for how popular the product is. It's just, and anybody gets an opportunity to work at that level should really be appreciative. Not only the fact that they're going to make a lot of money, but it's a great honor, to have, 90,000 people plus performing in front of me. I know that I'll be right there, and it'll be a very emotional moment for me with Ashley.
And if anything, it just also too, like, people want John Cena to, come back.
Yeah.
Too. It makes more demand for him to even come back since he has been hurt. And when you think of, WWE, you think John Cena.
Yeah.
So, but that's like too with Nikki being out. It's her being gone opens more doors for more, divas to get opportunity. But also too, if she was here, she would add depth and story because she's another, body.
Yeah.
Who has a lot of exposure and a lot of equity already behind her, and she's Nikki Bella, longest reigning Divas champion. So that's too kind of like, we need her. It opens opportunities for more girls, but it also like hurts us because we don't have, that someone that's already made.
Yeah. Well, that's a great answer. You think I'm proud of you?
Oh, I don't know, Dad.
So, hey, Charlotte, you mentioned John Cena. He's obviously somebody who gets a lot of hate online, and for whatever reason, you've had your fair share of nastiness on social media. How has that been an adjustment for you to go from, not really obscurity, but not really in the limelight, to all of a sudden all your social media blows up, and there's a lot of positive, but there's some negative too. How have you dealt with that?
I'm not gonna lie. I struggle with it, but I only struggle with it because I'm just that hard on myself. John Cena, I guess you could say, is someone like he talked to Becky and I actually personally after our match on SmackDown that airs tonight, and gave us some feedback and what he thought. And one of the things he personally was like, I walk out there and I let the crowd have their "Let's go Cena sucks" moment. And then, by the end of the match, they're chanting "Let's go Cena."
Right.
So then I look at it and I think to myself, with all the, here's a guy that never, does get a lot of backlash, but he's the number one guy in the company. And when I personally talked to my dad behind the scenes, my dad's like, you think I read the internet and you think I ever valued who I was as a talent because of what someone was saying on the internet? But then again, I think to myself, well, my dad really wasn't around when Twitter wasn't around when my dad was the champion.
Right.
But for me, I think I can either let it get me down, or I can either use it as motivation. And through what I've been through the last 3 years, I'm really good at taking a lot of negativity and making it positive. So whatever, the negative stuff they're saying on the internet, obviously I can't change the way I look, and I wouldn't for anything, because I wouldn't be on the cover of Muscle and Fitness this month. But I just take it as a positive and say, okay, you want to say that? Well, watch me. Because I will be the greatest, or one of the greatest female performers, hopefully, to come out of WWE.
Yeah,
no matter what the internet wants to say.
Yeah, the old saying in our business.
And let me one more thing too. People are so want to say, well, they're so different than NXT, and then it's WWE. And the big issue with that is what me, Sasha, Bailey, and Becky created at NXT did not happen overnight.
Right.
It didn't happen in 1 month, it didn't happen in 4 months, and it didn't happen in 6 months. It took 3 years. So when the three of us debuted, they're like, God, they need to debut. They debut. Well, we do debut. And it's not good. Everyone has an opinion. But the three of us cannot do what we did down there in 6 months. Also, it's a completely different audience, for one. Yes, you still have your diehard fans watching, but you also have the rest of the universe who's not a diehard fan, who's never watched NXT, so it's a completely different ballgame. But we'll get there, and the media, with anything, people, I think it's easier to be negative than positive. You never hear someone saying, like, it's easier to put something down than, no one likes the flavor of the month.
Right.
Yeah. And the oldest saying in our business, and I heard it from the day I started being successful in my own career, is if they're talking about you, you're doing something right. That's pretty much it. If everybody's knocking you must be doing something good, or they wouldn't be talking about you. Does that make sense?
Oh, I know. And like for Conrad, for the media, it's only because I think it bothers me, only because I care so much about, I am that passionate about it, and it's easy, I'm a Flair. I'm a generation kid. I have, it's so easy to make your own assumptions if you really haven't seen my journey.
Yeah, I mean, all the way down. You're taller, you're blonde, you're Flair's daughter, you didn't wrestle on the indies, blah, blah, blah. I mean, that you're in better shape. There's a million different things you could point to, but I just know it has to be an adjustment from being a personal trainer in North Carolina, and 3 years later, people are saying the most horrible things on social media that are strangers. You've never met them before. And I think sometimes people who write those things really lose sight of that this is a real person.
Well, it's fun. It's like I had a table of three with Natty and Tamina,
right,
and I kind of got emotional about it. But the amount of hate I get in terms of looking like a man or looking like my dad, and I said this on table of three, I was like, no shit, I look like my dad.
Right.
Like, when I get that on a daily, I'm like, what should I look like another guy? And they'd be like, take a maternity test. Sometimes I look at it and I'm like thinking, well, any person that's negative, I mean, does your daughter not look like you? And then I think to myself with guys, constantly getting Charlotte's a man, Charlotte's a man. I'm be like, you wish you looked like me.
I like that.
It's just.
Listen, you look like your mom. You just have my athletic ability.
No, but you know what I mean, Conrad? I think for a female, that's what's so hard for me is, one, because I wrestle because I enjoy wrestling, not because, I want you to critique me on how I look. Well,
you're beautiful, FYI.
Yeah, I mean, you're on the cover of a magazine. I don't know what else there.
Oh, no. And I'm not, but I think that's been the heart. You're right, because you go from living this small life in North Carolina where you're a personal trainer and, your job is to make people feel better about themselves. And then 3 years later, you have this job where, that's what you're being critiqued on.
Right.
Well, if it's of any consequence, I think you've done a phenomenal job. And I'm really
know how
proud of you.
That.
Dad, stop it, you.
No, really proud of you. And I can't thank you enough for taking time today from your busy schedule.
Before we let you get out of here, Charlotte, your biggest fan, Kansas, wants to know, what advice would you give to a young girl who wants to be in the WWE someday?
I would tell Kansas that school is most important. to graduate, to get a degree, and then if she still wants to do this, to follow her heart and her dreams, to start training, to find a local wrestling school that has some kind of credibility, and then maybe get some independent exposure, and then reach out to I'm not sure the process, but try to contact, send in her resume or her background or some pictures and get a tryout and go from there. Maybe get her first tryout, see what she needs to work on if she doesn't, get hired, and then go from there.
I think she knows some people that can help her get that out there.
I think Kansas does.
Well, thank you so much. This was awesome. You've been one of our most requested guests, and hopefully this wasn't too rough on you today. We appreciate the time.
No, super easy. Thanks, guys.
Hey,
thanks, Dad.
Thank you. I'll see you tomorrow.
I'll see you tomorrow in New Orleans.
Big signing in New Orleans, okay? Thanks.
All right.
Thank you. Love you.
Sounds good, brother.
Okay, brother.
Okay, brother.
Making the town, brother.
What? Like 86. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Conrad.
Thank you. Well, that was awesome, Rick. That's one of our most requested guests, and another fun podcast.
Yeah, I sometimes I'm amazed by how grown up she is.
The answer she gave about John Cena being injured and this being an opportunity, that's maturity.
No, but she didn't hesitate.
Yeah.
It just rolled off her.
Hey, man, I had a great show. I appreciate you having me on today. This was a fun one, and we'll see you next week right here on Woo Nation.
On Woo Nation, the Nature Boy and Conrad Thompson, the second wealthiest man in the state of Alabama, who's got more money than he has time. Goodbye, Conrad.
See you, bud.
Woo!